So Mariah here. Today I'm doing a video on baby paganism and why it's so offensive, coming from my own personal view. When I've dealt with that in my life, I started not being able to keep my cool about it, and now I'm much better because I do have some form of understanding with it, especially with my young face. So I do work with that, and I do try to teach people not to call me that, not to call the people that, and it's very complicated, and it's not always effective to try to be like, dude, I'm not a baby pagan. I've been practicing paganism for 9 years this month. This is my 9-year month anniversary thing. I started in October of 2006, and so I'm well past the baby pagan phase. And honestly, nobody is a baby pagan, and I don't think it should be something that we should call anybody. Even if they're new to things, they can still teach you something, so you don't give them disrespect at all. With baby paganism, it ranges from like being called that by one singular person, by a group, by online stuff, by online posts, and none of those are very polite. And with as much issues as we get from other people who aren't pagan, we don't deserve to get that from people who are pagan. And I started my 9 years with 4 years of solitary practice. I was a high schooler, and nobody wanted to touch me with 10-foot pole and teaching me at all because I was underage and the laws that talk about that. So, and I didn't have access to the internet at home. I had to do things at school and at the public library where there was a limited amount of time I was allowed on it. And I printed as much off as I could, utilizing the free library printing before it went into paying by page, even as a high schooler, crazy schools. And I would read it as much as I could. I'd get books from the library, starting with just books on nature and trees and crystals and herbs, and eventually as I became 18 and 19, moving into books strictly about paganism, because I found a librarian I could trust, and even though that library didn't carry any, they could get some in from other libraries for me. And so I would read as much as I could, and I eventually learned how to network, finding WiccanTogether.com. Even though I wasn't Wiccan, I could go on that site and find people who were pagan or willing to talk to me and kind of work with things. At this point, I was already 18. There was still a senior in high school, and I could get people to talk to me, and I could learn things. I tried to find a mentor, and that ended very, very badly. I would get involved with different groups, who, though I'm still involved with some of the ones that had drama issues, there are some that I don't talk to at all now. And it was a very big learning curve on how to kind of put myself out there and learn from people and not be treated like a child. And even as I was leaving my solitary practice and coming into a group practice, I would be treated like I didn't know anything, and I didn't have a right to talk, and that wasn't very polite because I'd been studying for 4 years already. And I delved into these groups. I learned how to kind of sink afloat, and then I moved past them because I wasn't going to deal with people who weren't going to respect me. I eventually ended up creating my own groups where I would treat people like I wanted them to treat me, and I'd have new people coming in who had never even been to a pagan ritual. I'd have people come in who've been pagan for years but only solitary, and we'd kind of be a community. But as I'm going to be moving around the country for the next 20 years, I'll continuously make groups where I want to have people who treat me the way I wanted to treat them, and then I'll leave. So it's still not exactly what I want. I can't have that permanent group that's going to be a family. And I'm learning now, as I live in New Jersey, what kind of groups can still treat me with respect, even with my young face, and how I can connect with them, even though I'm only here temporarily. When you're interested in networking and creating and speaking in the community, your face is going to get judged. I'm heavy, and because I'm so heavy, my face is very rounded, and I look very, very young. I still to this day, as a 24-year-old woman, get asked if I'm 15. So I have that permanently young face, and I'm flattered by it, but then I get very frustrated when people don't assume that I have something to say when I do, or as I'm starting to teach paganism to new people in the craft, I get that, but you're so young, and I've been doing this for 9 years. I'm not really that young. Uh, I see folks whose faces look as young as mine, and people assume that they're teenagers or haven't been around very long. There are friends of mine in groups that I go to now who've shared similar stories to mine, where people see their young face and they don't even talk to them. They assume that they're a high schooler and they don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole. And they get ignored or corrected, just like I get ignored or corrected. When I try to share some of my stories with different groups than the ones I'm actually involved in, they often skip over me, or, I like to sit on the ground, so people assume that I'm just there to listen instead of talk. And my experiences often get very invalidated, and I'm passed over in opportunities that I could use, like actually teaching in shops, because people assume I'm really, really young. And none of these things should ever be done. Not just because I'm frustrated with them happening to me, but I have something of value that I get ignored with. I could easily help other people in their path, and I do try. And my most common way of helping people is when they can't see my face. I often get questions online from my shop, or, I am on Pagan Space now, and people will shoot me a question, but they don't realize how young I am. Even if my profile photo is up there, it's still much different than in person, and they see how old I am and how long I've been practicing, and so they're asking a question. Whereas in person, they don't have that bio to read over, so they just ignore me. I'm often left out in discussions unless I'm leading them, or I'm involved in the group that I am involved in, and where they know me. People will just, like I keep saying, pass over me. And I hate this, not just because I get frustrated by it, but because I want people who have as young as a face as I do to have the say in the discussion that is going on around them. The ability to share their knowledge, even if they've only been practicing for 6 months or 1 month or a year, or 4 years or 5, they still have a right to say something. But this isn't to say that somebody who's been practicing for 20 years doesn't also have a right. There needs to be more of a balance. It's not just about the person who's been studying for 25 years always doing the talking, because then they're always going to be learning the same thing instead of something new. And then they don't get to help somebody else flourish because they're doing all the talking. They do deserve respect, but so too does somebody who is an elder in age but a new person to the faith. And a person who is an elder, or 9 years in my case, in the faith, but young in the faith. Had I been raised pagan, I would be pagan for 24 years at this point. And I often, as a child, would think the things that I think now. I just didn't have a term for them, like many people. So I could say that I've been practicing much longer than I do say. And that would make me older in the faith, but still young in the faith. And so everybody deserves that respect, no matter where they are on the path, and everybody could teach each other. This isn't to say that you should let somebody talk forever and ever and ever, like I'm doing in this video, without speaking up and sharing your opinion too. Instead of interrupting somebody in the middle of a sentence, wait for a long pause. And then, you could even throw your hand up, be like, hey, I got something to say. Or maybe there's a talking stick in the circle, and make an attempt to, I've got something to say, and try to grab it so that people realize that you do have something to say. And even if it's, I agree with what you're saying, and I work that way too. I work with those goddesses, or I work with those gods. I do that with that crystal too. You could easily still pipe up in a conversation by saying, I do that too. Or I do that, but I have this twist on it. So it's not something that you have to have a whole new idea to share. So even if you're young in the faith and you're just starting out, you can easily still have that give and take conversation. There should never be somebody that is going to call you a baby pagan. And if they do, say, I don't deserve that conversation. I don't deserve to have to tell you that I deserve respect from you. If they tell you you need to be listening and not heard, then that's not something you need to be spending time with. So before you ever call or even think about calling someone a baby pagan, get off your high horse and get to know them. Say, hi, my name is Mariah. I've been practicing for 9 years and I'd like to know your story. Oh, you've only been practicing for however long? That's cool. How did you get started? And what sort of things are you into? And you can easily learn about anything, even if it's not something you're personally into, if you just have a conversation with somebody. Anybody can teach you if you would only listen. Thank you and have a good day.